Shanghai, a metropolis of nearly 25 million people.
To put it in perspective, that's bigger than the population of most nations. In fact, it's just 2 million short of the population of Australia, nearly 7 million more than the population of the Netherlands, and over 4 times the population of Singapore.
Shanghai is China's most populous urban area, and has long been its most cosmopolitan city as well. And it's this cosmopolitan vibe that inspired Shanghai expat Paul Mike Ashton to coin the playful English-Chinese phrase, City 不 City, which went viral quickly.
在大自然喝茶不 City 啊，妹妹，骑马 City 不 City？
好 City 哦，
今年来上海啊，城市怎么样呢？
好 City 啊
，Super City 啊，好 City 啊啊。You know, we're coming off of the edge of a period of time in which China was sort of closed off, and we were, like China was kind of focused on COVID. There's this push to kind of re-engage, and so I think the level of language cross-switching there resonated with that in some ways, and just the idea of like being back on the global stage.
Being the gateway of China, Shanghai suffered during the COVID lockdowns, but also benefited when the country pushed to re-engage with the world. As China offers longer visa-free entries to more countries, Shanghai's attractions are filled with foreign tourists again. But the tourist numbers only tell half the story.
Since the draconian COVID lockdowns, Shanghai has been open for business for over 2 years now. But the chunk of the expat community that it lost never really returned. So are Shanghai's heydays on the international stage has a cosmopolitan hub behind it?
So I'm Melissa, I am a Dutch national and I came to Shanghai actually in 2017. I did my first internship here and I fell completely in love with Shanghai. Everything and anything is possible. You can have your cup of coffee delivered within 15 minutes on your doorstep. You can have, I remember my first job, I needed to have business cards. My Chinese boss at that time said like, no problem, we can just print them already very quickly. Within 2 hours, the Kuaidi came into the restaurant delivering the business cards, and I was just so surprised because this would never happen in the Netherlands.
But Melissa's life in the fast lane came to an abrupt halt when the COVID lockdowns landed. She returned home, but missed her life in Shanghai and was soon back in late 2023. The city she missed, however, has changed.
People are very more careful about the future. They think, let's save up our money, so less consumerism. And then, of course, also less foreigners. For example, if I go out on the street or if I'm in the subway, compared to 2018 to 19, I saw at least a foreigner almost everywhere, on every corner of the street. But then, for example, now in 23 and in 2024, I see this a lot and lot less.
Italian chef and tattoo artist, who calls himself Lucky Lasagna, arrived in Shanghai even earlier than Melissa. He still waxes lyrical about the Shanghai he encountered when he first landed over a decade ago.
When I arrived was, wow, so I'm having the goosebump now. It was really the international city where local and foreigner were together with no any problem, just curious and respectful. An incredible energy and the most international city I ever been. The feeling was incredible. Downtown was 50-50 foreigner and local Chinese people. Super interesting. First change was the arrival of the first COVID and lockdown that stopped a little bit, and the big one was the second lockdown. It was a shock. A lot of foreigners went away. Obviously, in a Western restaurant, I can feel the lack of that kind of business. For example, the wine is a way more difficult to selling wine now. We have different customer base.
It's just past 5 p.m. on a cold December Wednesday. In downtown Shanghai, Melissa is holding an audience of a room full of expatriates.
Current status of foreigners in China.
Melissa is a headhunter by profession. Her company studied numbers from the Shanghai Bureau of Statistics in 2018 and the 7th National Census in 2020. And they found that between those 2 years, before the pandemic and in the midst of it, the number of foreigners in Shanghai dropped over 41%. With no official numbers since then, in 2024, her company made estimates based on nationalities here that have statistics. And they found that the number of foreigners dropped even further in 2023, but made a slight recovery a year later. Still, the number of foreigners in Shanghai in 2024 is nearly halved of what it was before in 2018.
So these are not only foreigners from Western countries, but these are also foreigners from developed Asian countries. So a lot of the Japanese actually make up the largest foreign population here in Shanghai, and half of them are leaving. The same for the South Koreans and the Singaporeans, so a lot of them are leaving.
What's more, expat pay packages have also shrunk by 25%, in part driven by the emergence of multilingual Chinese nationals, some educated overseas, competing for the same shrinking executive job pie.
So for Chinese nationals, there is a lot of unemployment at the moment, and that's why it's also for employers, it's easier to find somebody on a lower salary at the moment. So a decade ago, we saw a completely different expat or foreign package here in China. There were a lot more allowances. So for example, school fees for an international school, a nice apartment and a car for the whole family. And compared to now, no school allowances, a capped housing allowance.
The drop in expat numbers, along with the drop in expat pay, is sending chills never felt before through Shanghai's upscale dining and lifestyle scene. It's early November 2024, and Shanghai is holding its 7th China International Import Expo. According to organizers, the 6-day event saw over 3,400 enterprises from across the globe keen to sell to China. And over $80 billion worth of tentative deals were inked. That's bigger than the GDP of half of the countries in the world. Despite the ongoing US-China trade tensions, the American presence is bigger than ever before.
Of course, everybody has some concern about US-China trade relations, but the companies that we represent, the vast majority of them are not making any major moves away from China.
Despite that note of optimism, a survey released by the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai finds only 2/3 of US firms in China profitable in 2023, a phenomenon echoed by their European counterparts. A survey by the European Chamber of Commerce finds that the profit margins for 2/3 of European companies in China are underperforming their global average. It's 9th of November. The crew for Scandinavian Airlines is quietly checking in for one last time at Pudong Airport. This will be the final flight between Shanghai and Copenhagen, a long-standing route that has succumbed to a slew of post-pandemic headwinds.
The Scandinavian airline is withdrawing from China after 36 years in the country. It joins other European carriers in withdrawing from the Chinese market. Virgin Atlantic recently withdrew its London to Shanghai service, citing significant challenges and complexities.
Both carriers are joining a slew of other airlines from the European Union in pulling out of China.
We can simply put the reason as the overall economics of the airlines on these routes are not satisfying anymore, especially compared with their performance on other routes within their overall international flight portfolio. And to be more specific, the reason could be the following one. First is the higher operating cost, since these airlines could no longer fly over the Russian airspace and they need to detour to source. And meanwhile, the Chinese airlines can still fly over the Russia airspace, and they have the cost advantage. On the other hand, I think the overall customer volume compared with the pre-COVID level dropped significantly.
The demand is dragged down in part by the drop in expat travel as the numbers of expats drop and the benefits shrink. As benefits contract, expats with family in tow also become rarer, as are the senior expats with the cash to spend on the more lucrative business class.
In 2014, it was very normal that a person would get 2 return flights home and then in the business class. Now people are even happy if they get 1 return flight to their home country on a yearly basis.
The impact is felt not just in the air, but on the ground as well.
我叫沈一丁，现在33岁，在上海做一个餐饮自媒体博主。
近几年来，就是从疫情之前到疫情之后到现在，你在上海看到哪些变化？
身边的外籍朋友会相对少了一些。如果从一个自媒体博主的角度来看的话，会觉得相对消费者，然后大家的消费习惯会发生一些变化。打比方 ，bistro 这个小酒馆的概念，可能在上海越来越盛行了。大家会把菜量减到更适宜，可能相对少的一个人群去享用的一个规模。部分是租金原因，因为在上海的这个运营成本啊、租金成本都比较高。2020年后，外籍的消费者可能是会相对下降一些。
As a matter of fact, in the past year, restaurants which have gone big or catered to the expat market have struggled to fill their tables. Many have closed. Other lifestyle businesses which expanded too quickly also suffered. Will's Fitness, for example, expanded aggressively in the boom years to become Shanghai's biggest fitness chain. At one point, it boasts over 70 gyms in Shanghai alone, but now the large majority of them are closed. Some shuttered by the mall landlords for arrears in rental and utilities.
The malls themselves are doing no better. This gigantic mall, for example, was opened more than half a year ago. It is well connected with direct access to an MRT station with 2 subway lines. Yet it has no shops open for miles and miles on end.
The mall sprouted up as part of the building boom prior to the pandemic. But with the rise of online shopping, the drop in consumer confidence, and to some extent the exodus of rich expats has led it to become a ghost mall. This is an extreme case. But empty shop fronts are not uncommon in other city centre malls. So much so that mall owners are getting rather creative at disguising them to avoid their buildings from degenerating into ghost malls as well. Lin Han Shen is a professor of finance at NYU Shanghai. The American has witnessed firsthand Shanghai's development for over 18 years.
5 to 10 years ago, you would think that you simply can't build it fast enough. Commercial properties in particular, they take years in advance of planning. And during that time period, nobody could have predicted COVID would hit. Nobody could have predicted the increasing complexity of global geopolitical relations between nations. Developers, they're just going to have to figure out how to manage their costs downwards and adjust to what tenants can afford to pay.
Recently, the food and beverage sector in Shanghai has seen big brand names closing. And then in the fitness sector, we have a homegrown chain struggling to survive, closing branches very suddenly, some of them. Do you think this is a symptom of the overall state of Shanghai's economy?
Probably a big factor behind this is the weak property sector. Okay, the property sector probably has a key aspect of affecting consumer confidence, in large part because for many Chinese, probably upwards of 70% of their net wealth, their net worth, was tied to the property sector. At one point a few years ago, the property sector made up almost 30% of China's GDP. No single industry should make up that large a part of China's economy. The government has been trying to slow it down and shrink it. Now, the challenge is this. It takes a long time to shift more economic development to other parts of the GDP of the economy, such as technology.
In the 19th and 20th century, the Bund was Shanghai's financial promenade. But that financial baton was passed on to Lu Jiazui across the Huangpu River in the 1990s. Lu Jiazui is supposed to be a model for reform and opening up of the financial sector, the vanguard of efforts to make Shanghai a global financial hub by 2020. Yet it too has been found wanting.
China's goal to turn Shanghai into an international financial center. It's a work in progress. When you have an international financial center, to make it work, you really need three elements. First, free flow of people. Second, free flow of capital. And third, free flow of data.
To some extent, all of China, even Shanghai's Lu Jiazui district included, still has restrictions on the flow of data and capital because of concerns of economic and financial stability as well as national security. But that's where a new special district in the remote southeastern corner of Shanghai comes in. Lingang is positioned to be Shanghai's experiment with further liberalization. What happens at Lingang could shape policies and innovations to strengthen Shanghai's position as an international financial center. Even if the city doesn't become a major player in global finance, Prof. Lin tells me Shanghai would still be well placed to benefit from seismic shifts in China's economy, including the move into high-tech industries as well as the growing role of the renminbi.
I think what we're going to really need to focus attention on is the role of the renminbi in global trade, because much of China's trade is still dollar-based. Gradually, there's going to be a transition for renminbi, and if that really happens, then Shanghai will be at the center of that. If China really wants to double its GDP by 2035 from 2020 levels, they can't rely on cheap labor anymore. It's going to have to be increasing productivity, and technology is going to be a key source of that. But here's the thing, technology isn't cheap. We don't know what the sources of innovation is. So there's going to have to be a lot of trial and error, a lot of capital investment to see how that works. And there's going to be no better place for raising capital for technology innovation than Shanghai. What we know is that there are many companies that do have a strong interest in China because, number one, the huge manufacturing capacity that you can take advantage on. And two, even if the economy is slowing down in its rate of growth, no one can dispute China still has an incredible market size, especially in the consumer market size. So as China tries to align its policies for growth, there's going to be a need for financing, talent, innovation. And from my perspective, having been here in China for the last 18 years, Shanghai is near the top of still attracting talent into China, if not from foreign countries, at least domestically within China.
Indeed, expats aside, it's estimated that over 1/3 of Shanghai's residents come from elsewhere in China.
And it's this heady mix of professionals from all across China and from all around the world that makes Shanghai such an exciting place, even in a slowing economy. And for people like me living here, Shanghai exudes a charm that's quite hard to put into words.
It's a charm that Shanghai native Cross Yu is trying to encapsulate at his international award-winning cocktail bar, a vintage-inspired space with a hedonistic disco vibe. For this season, Cross is even trying to distill the cosmopolitan nature of Shanghai into a cocktail.
Shanghai, yes.
Tonight, he's inviting F&B blogger Yi Ding to sample it.
上海这杯酒还蛮有意思的，这里面有 chocolate， 有 peach， 有ferment bean curd，and we have cognac. Obviously, we have wine. Just like a sangria. 其实上海的就是比较 international 的这个是刻在骨子里面的，就跟上海有超过5000家的 coffee shop， 这是全世界最多的。就大家其实比较海派的，会穿西服、喝咖啡，你也会吃一些日料，你也会吃很多。所以其实这个是刻在上海人骨子里的。我觉得记得是从我爸妈那一代就一直是这样。而且还有一点很好，就是上海是非常安全 ，which is very city。对你现在在路上你丢什么东西是可以找回来的 ，even 是钱包。我觉得这个是一件很酷的事情。但我相信全世界有很多地方都有它很可爱的地方。上海我觉得很酷的是，它可以代表整个中国这么多的饮食文化、餐饮各个，然后同时呢，它又保有国际化的一个包容度，所以你不会有一个不适应。你知道现在在这边生活，你就是一个上海人。
Lucky Lasagna is one of those expats who feel right at home in Shanghai. After all, he's married to a local and now has a child here. But he's also confident about Shanghai, and he's putting his money where his mouth is. He's looking to reopen his other passion project, a tattoo parlor that closed during the pandemic, a parlor that's aptly named No Way Back.
It's a nice place to live. And I'm not only speaking about the banal things like it's safe. Yes, it's safe, but this one don't make it more funny or interesting. It's the vibe of the city. Maybe can arrive with a huge changing from the young people. Young Chinese people that live in Shanghai, young Shanghainese people are doing a changing. And they want to feel again, they want to feel young and full of energy. And they are doing it again.
With fewer expats and changing consumer habits, Shanghai's cosmopolitan vibe may feel a bit subdued now on the city's streets. But history has shown the city always finds a way to reinvent itself. Just like this old neighborhood. It's about a century old, but it's become an Instagrammable hotspot. For now, it will be the locals and those drawn from across China that will reshape the city's next chapter, one in which Shanghai pulses with energy, opportunity, and unmistakable city vibes.